Welcome back to SwitchTop. Indie games run great on the Nintendo Switch. They're perfect for handheld sessions, and this list has 20 of them worth your time. Let's get into it. Pipistrello and the Cursed Yoyo. You play as Pipit, part of a crime family whose aunt gets attacked, her soul shattered and locked inside mega batteries powering rival businesses across the city. Your only weapon is a yo-yo, and that's the whole hook. It's a top-down, GBA-style metroidvania, open world with a flip screen format, and the devs call it a yo-yo-vania without any irony. Combat and puzzles both run through yo-yo tricks, bouncing off diagonal surfaces, chaining moves to reach hidden areas, that kind of thing. You collect badges that change how you play, and upgrades from a loan shark, which tells you the tone this game is going for. There's a surprising amount of world building packed into a genre that usually skips story. If you liked Minish Cap or Link's Awakening and want something that respects your intelligence with its puzzles, this is worth the download. Mina the Hollower. You're Mina, an inventor mouse who built the spark towers powering the city of Osix, and you get called back when those towers start going dark. The gothic 1700s-inspired world is full of anthropomorphic animals, and the vibe sits somewhere between Link's Awakening and Demon Souls. The core mechanic is hollowing, burrowing underground to dodge attacks, cross gaps, and access secret areas, and it's used constantly across the map. You pick a starting weapon, whip, hammer, or blades, and find sidearms and trinkets along the way. Runs are around 18 to 20 hours depending on how much you explore. There's a betrayal at the center of the plot involving a former guard captain, and side quests get weirdly dark for what looks like a cute retro adventure. Solid pick if you want more Zelda-likes. Shogun Showdown. It's a turn-based tactical roguelike set in feudal Japan, built around tile-based abilities instead of a full deck. You start with just 2 tiles and queue up to 3 actions before committing, which lets you chain enemies into each other for extra damage, but also risks locking all your abilities on cooldown if you get greedy. Movement and attacks play out on a small grid, closer to Into the Breach than Slay the Spire, and enemy intentions are telegraphed, so positioning actually matters. You unlock new playable characters with different starting tiles and special moves by beating bosses, and skulls earned from runs go toward permanent shop upgrades. It's tight, replayable, and built for short handheld sessions where you want to think a few moves ahead without a huge time commitment. Planet of Lana II. The first game hit hard emotionally, and this sequel widens the scope without losing that. Set a few years later, Lana and her companion Mui are looking after a younger villager when things get complicated fast, and the story pulls in more of the planet's history. Snowy mountains, underwater sections, ruins, even urban environments this time. It's still a 2.5D puzzle platformer at heart, but Lana can now wall jump, dash, and slide. And you get new tools, like remotely controlling drones and creatures to solve puzzles, instead of just Mui's abilities from before. Some reviewers felt the sequel loses a bit of the original's mystery by explaining more up front, but the visuals and music are still doing a lot of heavy lifting, and the back half of the story picks up hard. Runtime is shorter than you'd expect, around 5 to 8 hours, but it's a complete experience. CrossCode. This is one of the most underrated action RPGs on the platform. It's presented as an MMO within its own universe, which is a strange framing device, but it works, giving you lore-friendly excuses for grinding, quest markers, and NPCs. Combat is real-time and ball-based. You're throwing an energy ball at enemies and environmental puzzles alike, with elemental types that change how attacks behave. The dungeons are genuinely some of the best puzzle design in any action RPG, closer to Zelda dungeons than typical MMO fetch quests. There's also a real story underneath the game-within-a-game premise, about the protagonist Leah slowly regaining her voice and memories, and it gets surprisingly emotional by the end. If you want something dense, with dozens of hours of content and a satisfying skill tree, this is criminally overlooked. Slay the Spire. the game that basically defined the deck-building roguelike genre, and it's still the benchmark. You climb a spire floor by floor, picking cards, relics, and paths as you go, building a deck that has to survive increasingly nasty boss fights. Each of the 4 characters plays completely differently. The Ironclad leans on strength and exhaustion. The Silent stacks poison and shivs. The Defect juggles orbs, and Watcher plays around stances. What makes it click is how legible everything is. You always know exactly what an enemy is about to do next turn, so losing feels like a mistake you can learn from rather than bad luck. Runs are fast enough that losing doesn't sting for long, and the way relics and card synergies stack up gives it real depth for hundreds of hours. On Switch, it's perfect for a quick run on the bus. Pizza Tower. Chaotic, hand-drawn, and absolutely relentless, this is a game about outrunning your own combo counter. You play as Peppino, a stressed-out pizza chef racing through Wario Land-inspired levels at breakneck speed, grabbing toppings, smashing enemies, and trying to escape before a giant pizza monster catches up to you on your way out. The animation is the real star. Constant, exaggerated, borderline unhinged, and it never stops moving even when you're standing still. Scoring well means chaining combos without stopping, which turns every level into a puzzle about momentum and route memorization once you're going for high ranks. It's got genuine difficulty if you're chasing P ranks, but casual players can just enjoy the ride. There's nothing else quite like it visually or mechanically, and it's a great pick-up and play option on the Switch. Katana Zero, a neo-noir, one-hit kill action game that plays like a puzzle disguised as an action game. Every level is a single room or building you clear in seconds of actual gameplay, but you'll die constantly, figuring out the right order of moves, since one hit kills you and enemies too. The twist is time manipulation. You can slow things down mid-fight to line up dashes and deflects, and once you clear a level, you watch a slick replay of your run, like a highlight reel. The story follows an amnesiac assassin working through hits while talking to a shady therapist between jobs, and it gets weirder and more paranoid as it goes, with dialogue choices that actually shift how scenes play out. The soundtrack is doing a lot of work too, synthwave that fits the neon, sleazy tone perfectly. Short game, maybe 5 hours, but it's dense with style and tight design. Chained Echoes. If you grew up on 16-bit JRPGs like Chrono Trigger or the early Final Fantasy games, this one is built for you specifically. It's set in the world of Volandis, after decades of war, and you play through a large cast of characters as a fragile truce starts falling apart from the inside. Combat is turn-based with a twist called the Overdrive Gauge, a meter that boosts your damage the longer you stay in a sweet spot, but punishes you hard if it overflows, so you're managing risk on every single turn instead of just spamming your best move. You also get a mech late in the game for open-world traversal and combat, which adds a whole extra layer. It's a genuinely huge single developer project, with a real emotional arc across a large party, and none of the padding that plagues a lot of retro-style RPGs. Worth the 25+ hours easily. Nobody Saves the World. From the Drinkbox team behind Guacamelee, this one throws out a fixed class system entirely. You play as a literal nobody, a shapeless blob who can transform into forms like rat, ghost, slug, or dragon, each with its own skill tree and abilities that combine with other forms for weirder combos. It's an action RPG viewed from a top-down angle, dungeon crawling through short, well-paced quests rather than one giant open world, so it never overstays its welcome in any single area. The humor is dry and self-aware, without being annoying about it, poking fun at RPG tropes constantly. What keeps it interesting mechanically is unlocking forms and then discovering combos between them, like turning into a ghost to phase through walls, or a slug to leave a damaging trail. It's a great pickup for shorter sessions, since quests are bite-sized by design. Vampire Crawlers, the Turbo Wildcard from Vampire Survivors. From the team behind Vampire Survivors, this takes the addictive snowball feeling of that game and rebuilds it as a turn-based, card-driven dungeon crawler. You play cards in ascending mana order to chain combos, where each card multiplies the effect of the next one in the sequence. And wild cards let you extend that chain further, 10, 20, 30 cards deep if you're bold enough. You explore multi-floor dungeons that actually have functioning walls, unlike the original's open arenas, digging down with a shovel to reach new floors packed with treasure and odd interactions. Deck building ties into experience and leveling. Chests give you gems and power-ups, and you can chase weapon evolutions and summon familiar Vampire Survivors characters for cascading effects.
Stronger! Yes!
Dredge, a fishing game that slowly turns into cosmic horror, and it's a much better hook than it sounds. You're a fisherman who washes up in a strange archipelago and takes on a job hauling in catches for the local townsfolk. Except the waters get stranger and more dangerous the longer you're out there. Managing your boat's inventory grid under time pressure is the core loop, deciding what to keep, what to sell, and how far you can push before nightfall turns the sea against you. As you go deeper into the story, actual eldritch stuff starts creeping in. Corrupted fish, unsettling sightings, and choices that hint at something much bigger going on beneath the surface. The atmosphere carries most of the tension, a slow dread that builds without ever fully spelling itself out. It's a shorter game, maybe 10 hours, but the mood sticks with you well after the credits. Cult of the Lamb. You're a lamb saved from sacrifice by an ominous stranger, and in exchange, you have to build a cult and spread its influence across the land. It splits its time between roguelike dungeon runs, hack-and-slash combat with a decent variety of weapons and curses, and management sim sections back at your camp, where you're feeding followers, building structures, and, yes, indoctrinating them further. The two halves feed into each other well. Dungeon runs get you resources for your cult, and a stronger cult gives you buffs for dungeon runs. The tone is dark but consistently funny, leaning into how absurd cult mechanics look when you're doing them to cute animal characters. There's a good amount of content here between story bosses, cult management, and side activities, and it holds up for a solid 20+ hours without getting stale. Dave the Diver. A genuinely weird combination that somehow works perfectly. Half underwater exploration and combat, half sushi restaurant management. During the day, you dive into a mysterious blue hole, harpooning fish, fighting off dangerous sea creatures, and finding rare ingredients and treasure the deeper you go. At night, you run a sushi restaurant using whatever you caught, seating customers, upgrading your menu, and hiring staff to keep things running smoothly. Both halves get more complex as you progress. New diving gear and weapons unlock deeper areas, while the restaurant grows from a small stall into a full operation with guest chef collaborations. The story has more going on than you'd expect, too, involving a research facility and some genuinely surprising plot turns. It's a huge amount of content for what looks like a simple pitch on paper, easily 40+ hours if you want everything. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. Made by the Blasphemous team, this is a side-scrolling entry set alongside the events of the original 1988 NES game. Ryu Hayabusa leaves for America to honor his father's will, and while he's gone, the barrier between the human and demon worlds shatters, dumping an army on Hayabusa Village. You mainly play as Kenji Mozu, Ryu's disciple, alongside Komori, an assassin from a rival clan who ends up fused with him after a desperate move mid-fight. Combat is fast, precision-based platforming with reflectable projectiles, ledge grabs, and a hypercharge mechanic that lets you instantly kill tanky enemies by chaining kills off weaker ones first. It leans hard into old-school Ninja Gaiden difficulty while keeping controls tight and modern. Runtime is on the shorter side, but the pixel art and boss design make every stage worth the trouble. Cuphead, still one of the best-looking games ever made, hand-drawn, frame by frame, in the style of 1930s rubber hose cartoons. You play as Cuphead or Mugman, who lose a bet to the devil and now have to collect debts from a rogues gallery of increasingly unhinged bosses to pay it off. It's almost entirely boss rush structure. Each fight is a multi-phase gauntlet with distinct attack patterns you have to memorize and dodge around while managing your own limited parry and special moves. The difficulty is real. This isn't a game that holds your hand, but the feedback loop of learning a pattern and finally clearing a fight is deeply satisfying. There's a small amount of run-and-gun platforming sprinkled in between bosses too, plus a DLC expansion that adds a whole new island and character. If you want a genuine test of skill wrapped in incredible art, this delivers both. Hades. Supergiant took the roguelike formula and wrapped it around one of the best-written stories in the genre. You're Zagreus, son of Hades, trying to escape the underworld and reach Mount Olympus, dying repeatedly along the way and getting sent right back to try again. Every run you pick boons from Olympian gods that completely change how your weapon plays, so a spear run with Zeus buffs feels nothing like a bow run with Ares curses. The real trick is that death isn't a punishment here, it drives the story forward. Characters remember your previous runs, relationships develop, and the narrative actually progresses the more you fail. Combat feels incredible, fast, responsive, and different every single attempt, thanks to the boon combinations. It's one of the tightest loops in gaming, easy to pick up for one more run, and hard to put down. Stardew Valley, the farming sim that proved one person can build something this deep and lasting. You inherit a rundown farm from your grandfather and leave the corporate grind behind to fix it up, which sounds simple until you realize how much is actually packed in here. Farming, mining, fishing, combat, relationships, and a whole town full of characters with their own schedules and stories. Every season shifts what you can grow and what events are happening in town, and the mines below have their own roguelike adjacent combat and resource loop if you want to break from farming. You can date and eventually marry townsfolk, each with genuinely written arcs rather than just a stat bar to fill. It's endlessly replayable since there's no single correct way to build your farm or spend your time, and updates have kept adding content years after release. Celeste, a precision platformer about climbing a mountain that turns into something much more personal the further you go. You play as Madeline, dealing with anxiety and self-doubt made literal through a shadow version of herself you meet partway up. And the climbing itself becomes a metaphor the game never has to state outright. Mechanically, it's tight and demanding. A dash, jump, and wall climb are your entire toolkit, and levels are built around precise chains of inputs where death is instant, but respawns are equally instant. So failure never really breaks your flow. Strawberries scattered through each level are optional challenges for players who want more, while the core story path stays accessible if you just want to see it through. The soundtrack is one of the best in the genre too, quietly reinforcing the emotional beats without ever getting in the way. Sea of Stars. You control two Solstice warriors, Valir and Zale, who combine sun and moon magic to battle against the Fleshmancer's corrupted creations across a beautifully pixelated world. Combat runs on timed hits for both attacking and defending, plus a system where you have to match elemental weaknesses to break enemy locks before their strongest attacks land, which keeps every fight active instead of just menu selecting your way through. Exploration has genuine platforming and puzzle sections woven into dungeons, not just filler between fights. And the world map lets you sail between islands at your own pace. The story goes to some surprisingly dark places by the back half, without losing the charm it opens with. Between the combat depth, the world design, and one of the best original soundtracks in recent memory, this earns the top spot easily. That's the list, 20 games. Let me know in the comments which ones you've already played and what I missed, because there's always more hiding in the eShop. Thanks for watching, catch you in the next one.